Okay, so quick video today on natural disturbances and how an ecosystem can respond to those natural disturbances. Okay, so natural disruptions to ecosystems. So we've talked about these before, natural disturbances that can impact ecosystems. These can be things like natural disasters. These can be things like new predators moving into an area. These can be things like wildfires. I guess I would consider it a natural disaster. It can be climate change because there's certainly natural variation in climate. So we're going to talk about two terms. The first one is resistance. Resistance is the ability to remain unchanged when being subjected to a disturbance. Now, of course, the picture that I have here is not really one that any species can really be unchanged by a fire of this magnitude. But you will see that in most cases, your aquatic systems here are going to remain unchanged. There's going to be disturbance all around them, and there will be resulting disturbance to their ecosystem, but they remain relatively unchanged. The other term, similar to resistance, is resilience. Now, resilience and resistance are a little different. Resistance is the ability to remain unchanged. Resilience is the ability of an ecosystem to recover from a disturbance and return to its pre-disturbed state. And it's really about that rate of recovery. So when we talk about a resilient ecosystem, we're talking about one that can quickly recover from a disturbance and return to that pre-disturbed state. So if we think about this, there's kind of a cycle that ecosystems go through in terms of maintaining resilience. Okay, so resistant versus resilient. If we have a disturbance, one of the things about a resistant ecosystem is that they usually have a breaking point. Most forests can be fairly resistant to fire, but you reach a breaking point, a certain number of fires or a certain intensity of fire, and you're going to break that resistant system. Or it might be an aquatic system and the pH is changing and changing and changing, and there's no change in the system. It is resistant, it's not changing. And then the pH drops below a certain point, and that disturbance is what breaks the system. On the other hand, if you have a resilient ecosystem, it's going to be affected by the disturbance, but it's going to bounce back. And a lot of resilient ecosystems, when they're subjected to the same disturbance over and over again, actually become more resilient, so that each time they're subjected to that disturbance, it affects them less. And so you can see that in the graph here. So resilient systems are impacted but come back. Resistant systems don't change, but they usually have a breaking point. There is something in ecology called the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, and this says that if you have medium frequency of disturbances, an intermediate frequency of disturbances, that actually increases diversity if you have periodic disturbances, because those disturbances create opportunities for certain organisms to reach a higher threshold than they did before the disturbance, and then those resilient species are going to come back. And so you actually increase the diversity of a system by having frequent or relatively frequent disturbances. A great example of this is the Intertidal Zone. This is a zone that goes through disturbances twice a day at a minimum. It goes from being covered with water to being uncovered. And so these species are disturbed on a regular basis. And then you also have seasonal variations in tides. And so along with a daily cycle, you have a seasonal cycle, and then you also have storms that are going to cause disturbances, and they're going to bring water even higher up, or they're going to pull water even farther away. So this is a system that is dependent on those regular disturbances, and without them, it actually can't survive. So if intermediate disturbances are good, what makes our modern day change different from all that previous natural change? It really comes down to frequency and intensity. And so our anthropogenic causes have much higher frequency and, generally speaking, a much higher intensity. And so that's where we'll leave it with natural disturbances, and we'll pick up with this conversation in class on Monday, where we're going to discuss whether ecosystems can recover from these intense, infrequent disturbances, if they can recover from frequent, mild disturbances. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday.